Have you ever looked at a world leader and thought, how did this person end up in charge of anything? You're not alone. It's a question that echoes through history, across civilizations, cultures, and ideologies. Why is it that genuine thinkers, calm decision-makers, and humble leaders so often remain in the shadows, while the loud, the reckless, and the deeply unqualified rise to the top? This pattern isn't just frustrating, it's terrifying. Because it keeps repeating. But what if I told you that Machiavelli, writing over 500 years ago, predicted this? He didn't just see it, he explained why it happens, and why, unless we change the system, it will keep happening. Let's dive into how psychology, power, and manipulation collide, and why the world keeps rewarding fools in suits. In 1999, two psychologists, David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger, published a groundbreaking study. It revealed something both hilarious and horrifying. People who are the least skilled at something tend to dramatically overestimate their abilities. This became known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, a cognitive bias where incompetence leads not to humility, but to confidence. And here's where things get dangerous. In many situations, especially in politics, confidence is often mistaken for competence. Think about it. When a person speaks with total certainty, when they make bold claims without hesitation, when they promise simple solutions to complex problems, we tend to believe them, even if they're completely wrong. Why? Because most people are psychologically wired to trust confidence. In times of uncertainty or crisis, we don't look for nuance. We look for leadership. And unfortunately, that often means the loudest voice wins. Let's put it another way. Imagine you're in a room full of people and the building catches fire. One person calmly says, "We need to evaluate all possible exits." Another shouts, "Follow me, this way," and charges toward a door. Who do you follow? Probably the second one. And that's how millions of people end up following false leaders. Not because they're smart, but because they seem sure. This illusion of competence isn't limited to politics. You see it in corporate boardrooms, religious institutions, and even on social media. The people who know the least often speak the loudest, while the genuinely thoughtful ones hesitate, weigh options, and often stay silent. But this isn't just a modern problem. The Renaissance was full of kings, popes, and generals who ruled with arrogance, not wisdom. And that's where Machiavelli comes in. Living in the brutal political world of 16th century Italy, Machiavelli didn't fantasize about noble rulers. He observed reality, as cold and as dark as it was. He saw how power was seized, held, and abused. He watched as fools, tyrants, and manipulators rose to the top, not because they were capable, but because they were willing to do what others wouldn't. In his eyes, politics wasn't about virtue, it was about survival, and those who survived were often the most ruthless, reckless, and unwise. And so, the illusion of competence, fueled by human psychology, keeps repeating. We reward the bold, not the wise. We follow the certain, not the careful. And in doing so, we give power to those who are best at pretending they deserve it. But Machiavelli didn't stop at pointing out the problem. He offered a warning, and a dark truth about how systems are designed to reward the wrong people. And that's what we'll explore next. To understand why foolish people rise to power and stay there, we need to step back 500 years. The year is 1513. A disgraced diplomat named Machiavelli is exiled from politics and tortured by the Medici family. While in exile, he writes a short, dangerous book that would change political philosophy forever. That book is The Prince. But Machiavelli wasn't writing a fairy tale about good kings and moral rulers. He wasn't interested in what should happen. He focused on what does happen, and what he saw was chilling. Power rarely goes to the most virtuous. It goes to the most calculated, the most fearless, and sometimes the most foolish, as long as they play the game better than everyone else. Let's be clear, Machiavelli didn't say be stupid, but he understood why fools could rise, because most people don't want truth, they want certainty. And a fool who acts decisively often beats a wise man who hesitates. In The Prince, Machiavelli lays out what a leader must do to gain and maintain power. It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose. In other words, optics matter more than ethics. To succeed as a leader, you don't need to be intelligent, you don't need to be moral. You just need to appear useful to the people and dangerous to your enemies. And sometimes, the illusion of strength is stronger than strength itself. Now consider how this plays out in real life. A smart, thoughtful leader might think deeply before acting, acknowledge uncertainty, show vulnerability. But according to Machiavelli's worldview, these qualities are liabilities. The public interprets caution as weakness. They confuse thoughtful silence with indecision. And in times of chaos, they cling to anyone who seems like they know what they're doing, even if that person doesn't. Machiavelli wasn't evil. He was brutally honest. He watched leaders who were kind, intelligent, and idealistic get crushed. And he watched ruthless opportunists, many of them far less intelligent, climb to the top through manipulation, fear, and spectacle. In fact, he makes an even darker claim. The people don't just allow it, they often demand it. Why? Because the masses don't want to rule. They want someone to make the hard decisions for them, and when faced with complexity, they look for simple answers, even if those answers come from fools. Let's return to the modern world. How many times have we seen politicians make wild, unrealistic promises, and still get elected? How often have we seen narcissism, impulsiveness, and ignorance rewarded with applause? It's not just a glitch in the system, it's the system working exactly as Machiavelli predicted. He understood that the path to power was often open to those who lied with conviction, acted with arrogance, and had no problem doing whatever it took to win. And the most dangerous part, once they gain power, they don't need to be wise to keep it. They just need to maintain fear, control appearances, and eliminate real threats, including the intelligent. This is why, historically, intellectuals, philosophers, and critics are often silenced or sidelined, not because they were wrong, but because they pose a threat to the fool's illusion. Machiavelli's warning wasn't just about leaders, it was about human nature, about how deeply flawed our instincts are when it comes to choosing who we follow. And unless we understand this, we'll keep confusing foolishness for bravery and arrogance for strength. But Machiavelli's world was very different from ours. Right, not exactly. Because in the age of media, social platforms, and instant gratification, the tools that Machiavelli described have become even more powerful. In our next chapter, we'll look at how modern systems, from elections to algorithms, supercharge the rise of the unfit, and why the wisest people are often the ones who never want power at all. Let's fast forward to today, a world where influence travels faster than thought, and leadership is often decided not in the halls of policy, but on stages, screens, and social feeds. If Machiavelli were alive now, he wouldn't be shocked by the rise of foolish leaders. He'd be impressed by how efficient the modern world has become at elevating them. Here's the brutal truth. The systems we've built, political, social, digital, are no longer just indifferent to wisdom. They're actively hostile to it. Let's break that down. Modern media, especially social media, favors simplicity, speed, and spectacle. A thoughtful, nuanced leader might take 3 minutes to explain a complex issue. A fool, they'll shout a one-line slogan that goes viral. Guess who wins? Platforms are designed to amplify emotion, not accuracy. The loudest voice, the most dramatic gesture, the wildest claim. These rise to the top of our feeds. In this world, bold ignorance often outperforms quiet intelligence. Why? Because attention is the currency, and nothing grabs attention like a fool on fire. We're living in a time when everyone thinks they know everything. Doctors are questioned by Facebook comments, scientists are drowned out by conspiracy theorists, decades of experience are overruled by a viral TikTok. In this environment, the genuinely wise, the ones who say "I don't know" or "it's complicated," get pushed aside. Their humility is seen as weakness. Meanwhile, the confidently wrong rise like rockets. This is Dunning-Kruger on steroids. And the result? An epidemic of loud fools in powerful places. This one's difficult to say, but it must be said. Modern democracy, for all its benefits, is often reduced to a popularity contest. And who wins popularity contests? Not always the best, not the wisest, but the most charismatic, entertaining, or outrageous. In ancient times, kings and emperors inherited power. Today, leaders campaign. And campaigns aren't about competence, they're about branding. It's easier to elect a performer than a planner, a demagogue than a diplomat, a loud fool than a quiet genius. Machiavelli's idea that it is better to be feared than loved now has a third category. It is best to be watched, constantly, obsessively, on every screen. Now here's the paradox. The people we wish were in charge, the thoughtful, the rational, the wise, often avoid power. Why? Because they understand its weight. They know it corrupts. They see how easily it turns leaders into performers, philosophers into puppets. They're repelled by the game, and that leaves a vacuum, one that's quickly filled by the overconfident and the under. As Plato warned thousands of years ago, the price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. The truth is, power doesn't attract the best among us. It attracts those who crave it, even if they're the least fit to wield it. And in the systems we've built, that craving is all it takes, because power doesn't reward wisdom, it rewards performance. Because people don't follow the most qualified, they follow the most confident, the most visible, the most loud. And because, as Machiavelli knew all too well, virtue is fragile, but power is built on fear, illusion, and spectacle. Until we redesign the systems that elevate these people, until we value thought over noise, and caution over charisma, the pattern will repeat, and the fools will continue to rise. If this made you think, share it with someone who needs to understand why the world works the way it does. Subscribe for more ideas that challenge what you've been told. Because on this channel, we don't follow the noise, we question everything.